what has your experience been being a Puerto Rican skating?
It hasn't been it hasn't been a bad experience. I've met a lot of people. I'm lucky enough to have people gravitate toward me for whatever reason. I don't know what that is about.
You've got a great personality. I can tell, you've got you're very bubbly.
Not only I'm really, you're never going to guess how I'm feeling. Like, I'm one of those people that if I just blurt out. I'm one of those people, I just blurt out what I think, how I feel. I've been like this all my life. Everybody who knows me will tell you that. I have no problem telling you if something bothers me or whatever in limits. Like, I do have limits. And some people don't think I do, but I do. Like, there's certain things that I'll hesitate to say because I don't want to be perceived in what do you call it? Like a cliche or it's just
stereotype. Stereotype.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Stereotypes. Boom. That's the word I'm looking for, actually. So I try not to do that, but I still wind up getting stereotyped, even though I don't really want to put that out there. But I'm not from here either, so it's kind of hard because I'm a New Yorker. I come from the Bronx. I'm from the Bronx, New York City, and over there, you're not passive. Nobody there is passive. You know what I mean? There are very many shy people. It's a do or die type of thing. You just are who you are. My mother was always out there. She didn't hide or sugarcoat anything either. So right. I adapted that too. So yeah. So
I'm curious to know, have you yourself experienced some issues like Tracy?
Well, that's part of it.
Yeah.
I have actually a lot. Oh, I get it a lot. Like and a lot of it is curiosity, and I don't mind that. But when I get assumptions about who I am, that drives me bonkers. And a lot of times I just have to be quiet because I feel like I wouldn't have anyone around me to talk to except for those that get it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So what's an example of an assumption? What are some things that people would say to you that would?
Well, I mean, because I am vocal to them, I'm just loud. It's just, you're Latina, so you're just loud. You know what I mean? It's just, you're not respected. You're just viewed as this entertainment factor. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just here to entertain you. I'm here to shuck a jive and tell you what it is that you want to hear or make you laugh or make you feel. And I'm like, and there's certain times I would say things and I don't think I'm taken seriously. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll give you an example. I was part of the ownership, and the part of the reason why I stepped down, I felt that I wasn't viewed like the other girls. That's how I felt. I felt like I'm there, I'm part of it, but not really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm only there to like enforce things when things needed to be said, or was it if things were uncomfortable, but I didn't really feel like I was perceived as an equal, and that bothered me. Yeah. There was a time there was an argument that I had with someone on Facebook, and I cursed at someone, and I remember getting backlash from it because the person that I cursed at basically was very racist, was saying very racist things, and me, out of anger, I basically called her a bitch, right? Mm-hmm. And so I guess one of the other girls that were on the leadership, that were on the ownership, got a bunch of messages from people. Oh, she said this, and that's not the way that we should be perceived, or whatever the case. But it was okay for them to be racist. You know what I mean? And that bothered me. What bothered me more was that instead of having them say, well, if you felt that way, why don't you talk to her about it? It was more like I felt like I was being reprimanded. And I'm like, I'm defending who I am as a person, and that's an issue. And I was like, wow, that bothered me. I'm like, well, so I don't have an ally in that, but I'm more so getting chastised because I'm defending the type of person I am, or you know what I mean, or the fact that I'm even of color or of race or of whatever. I'm not a white girl, so you know, it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool for me to stand up and maybe I did handle it wrong, but either which way, just the way that it was handled, it bothered me. I was just like, so instead of coming to me and stating, well, why don't you have a or even when they contacted her, why didn't she just say, you know what, this is a partner. Why don't you have a discussion with her the same way you had it with me? And I wouldn't have had an issue with that. You know, I would have been able to be like, well, let me explain my side or why I felt that way or whatever. Instead, I've got the lashback and was given an excuse like, well, a friend of mine is a teacher, and she doesn't say much on social media because the school board will feel a certain way. Well, we play derby. We are not a school board. You know what I mean? This is not the same. And this is a social outlet. Mm-hmm. And if anything, I'm going to say how I feel, especially like with the whole, when Trump was put into office and everything, I was very vocal and verbal about how I felt about that. And I knew that it wouldn't be accepted. So I decided, I think it's time for me to step down, to not have to deal with hiding what I feel and who I am. I'm not that person. I can't do it. So I thought it was better that I didn't.
Yeah. When did you step down? How recent was that?
I stepped down the season before last.
So I was going to say, was it around the same time that that with all of the tornado or hurricane coming through Puerto Rico? Was it around that same time? Did that kind of influence any of that, or did you feel more?
I think I stepped down before that. I stepped down. When was our last season party? I stepped down, year before last, because we had COVID. So
yeah,
and nothing was happening. And right before our last end of season party, right before then, I had told them this was going to be my last season as part of the ownership because of that. I just didn't. I told them, you know, my mom had passed away too, and I was going through a lot, but I was just feeling like festering. This is just not for me. It was just best that I just left. You know?
So I mean, really, because of the lack of empathy and being able to stand up for
right. I just was like,
yeah,
and I'll give you a good example of that too. And don't get me wrong, I like those girls, but I don't think they understood. You know what I mean? I just don't think that they understood how I was feeling.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And I don't think I could have, me verbalizing things is hard sometimes because I let my emotions get to me. So it's hard for me to verbalize things at times. So I remember it was early in the season. Every day, every time there was a bout, we had to go in early, we would clean, whatever the case may be. There was one particular time I would show up. I showed up the first two times on time. It wasn't an issue. The third bout, I remember this clearly. It was the third bout, and my boyfriend at the time was, he's not my husband, but my boyfriend at the time, he had stepped out. He had to leave and do something for the kids. And the kids were here by themselves with my mother who was sick. And I was like, I can't leave, but I promise I'll be there as soon as I can, what have you. And I showed up late. It was like an hour and a half, maybe later than what, you know, when we usually start. And they were pretty much done with that setting up. And then like 2 bouts later, we had a meeting right before about, like a week before about, or a month before about, something to that effect. And I guess they were harboring that anger in some way toward me. And they were like, well, it seems like every time we come to set up, you're always late. And that wasn't the case. It was just that one time. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's funny because there's been times when people have been late. Things happen. I get it. And when that happened to me, I was just like, wow. I was thrown back. I was like, okay, so no empathy at the fact that, you know, I was
Yeah.
like, why not when everybody else gets a pass? you
Yeah.
know? So that affected me too. And I was just like, I'm just going to let that go. And ever since then, I felt like I had to be there on time or before time. And I was. I was there before everyone normally every time we had to set up because I didn't want to ever get that stigma that I was late. You know what I mean? Or that I wasn't committed, So,
I
yeah.
I do feel like that's often a theme in roller derby too, is that, and it to me feels like it doesn't even matter, that it's just people don't have empathy. I mean, I remember when I got my concussion that ended up ultimately retiring me, I tried to sit out and felt like people were staring at me, and went back in, and then, got hurt again. And so,
Right.
and
Right.
it's like, this is, it's not right that that's part of the culture, but it is, like in college sports now, or professional sports, they try to pull people out when they've had, when Patrick Mahomes was pulled out of,
Right.
a game just before the playoffs, people were freaking out, but it was
Mhm.
right. When you're talking about the health of a person, it's right. So, that's really unfortunate, especially when you're talking about your family and your mental health and things like that. So,
Mhm.
but did you ever, do you feel like, well, maybe I should ask, are there many other, like skaters of color?
There's a handful of us. I
uh,
think it's seven. I think me and another skater counted. I think there's like 7 or 8 of us. And
Seven or
that's
eight?
dwindled too because one of us has Mama's not there anymore. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. So I think there was like 7, to be
And
honest.
at how many skaters total? Can
There's
you?
120, I think,
Yeah.
skaters total. I
Yeah.
think there's like 7 or 8 of us.
Yeah. Do you know, did the other skaters have that same feeling? Or did you
I've
even talk
never
about it?
asked. I've never asked. I didn't want to stir the pot. Like I've never wanted to stir the pot. Like nobody ever, I don't think any of the skaters want to stir. Even I think if you ask us individually, we would all probably say the same. Nobody wants to stir the pot because you are feeling like there's not there very many of us. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
don't really know what someone else is thinking, and it just, unfortunately, that's just what it is. You don't, you yeah, you just don't want to say because it's not a bad environment, but for a person of color, it's a strange environment
Yeah.
because you're not acclimated to some of the things that other people are acclimated. They have different experiences from you. And granted, it's becoming more like people are able to talk about it more now. I didn't even want to discuss it for a long. I never wanted to discuss it. It wasn't until I saw Tracy's piece that I was like, I need to say something.
Yeah.
Like I felt I don't like feeling uncomfortable. And sometimes you hear little things that you'll be like, damn, that's weird,
Yeah.
or that's not something I can do, you know what I mean? Because I'm not part of that. So